Hi everybody, Amy Joy here. So today I just wanted to address an issue that was brought up on one of our Facebook feeds. I often will put out there news stories that have come across my news feed and sort of share them across all of our Facebook pages. And one recently that I shared was about a 4-year-old who was rescued from human trafficking because her mother had sold her to a human trafficker. And one of the questions was, well, that's all well and good, but how do you get a 22-year-old who's addicted to drugs and in human trafficking out of the life? Now that's not verbatim, but that's pretty much the gist of the question. And I didn't want to be flippant about it. I didn't want to put it in text because I don't want to come off in a way where I feel like I'm being rude or dismissive, but I really want to give some honest feedback about what the differences are and why we have such a difficult time getting adults out of human trafficking. So, the data says only about 1% of those who are in human trafficking ever get out. So that's a really, really grim statistic to look at. And when it comes to children, it's a lot easier only because if we find them, if we identify and then we're like, well, we know this is happening, and we contact the authorities, we know chances are something's going to happen. The child will be removed, put in a safe place, hopefully. And through that process, then the child is rescued. There will be substantial long-term trauma and damage, and depending on how resilient the child is, really depends on, how well they turn out later on and how well they have a developed support system along the way. So when it comes to adults, though, oftentimes it does start in childhood. When we look at human trafficking, we don't just see all of a sudden adults getting into human trafficking by accident. Many times it's because they have a history of childhood abuse or childhood trauma that often plays into it. Now, that's not to say that every case is exactly the same, but every victim that we have worked with, it's been a part of the history 100% of the time. It's something that we look at all the time when we say, well, what are the red flags of human trafficking? And childhood abuse is one of them. Also, being part of the foster care system, being part of the social service system at any point in their life is also a red flag, an indicator that they may be vulnerable later on to human trafficking. We also find that substance abuse goes hand in hand with human trafficking. So it really, depends on what kind of situation we're talking about. It's not a cookie cutter kind of thing. Some people are forced into it, some people are tricked into it, some people are, promised one thing and delivered something completely different. Oh, you're beautiful, you could be a model, I'm a modeling agent, I'd love to get you started in your career, and guess what? It's a pornography ring. Or, you could be a waitress and you end up being a stripper, that kind of thing. Or, what? He's my boyfriend. He's amazing. I love him. I'll do anything for him. Our life is awesome. But, if that boyfriend started out in his 20s and his girlfriend is 13, 14 years old and now he's got her addicted to heroin, that's part of the grooming process when it comes to human trafficking. We often see substance abuse and human trafficking go hand in hand. I have not met a victim yet who didn't have a substance abuse issue coming out of human trafficking. So when we talk about rescuing victims who are over the age of 18, it is different. When they're an adult, they have to be part of the process. They have to want to get out. But showing them that there are resources and ways to get out, that their life can look different than how it has looked, that is the hard part. We're seeing sort of recidivism like we see in domestic violence. It takes 7-8 times for them to actually attempt to get out and stay out. And oftentimes it just doesn't happen. So when we talk about human trafficking, when we talk about substance abuse, when we talk about those over the age of 18, they have to get to a point where they realize, something's not right. This is not where I want to be. I want a different life for myself. I want a different future. If you've got someone who's grown up in an abusive situation, it grooms them to accept the lies that a predator puts on them, right? So if they've grown up in the foster care system, it grooms them for a life of trafficking. Why? Because, well, you know what? They can pack in 15 minutes and be very transient. They never know who's in charge. They've never made a decision in their entire life? Is it the social worker, the foster care parent? Is it the judge? And that changes every 6 months, right? So by the time they get to a point where they're legally able to make their own decisions, they don't know how. They don't know how to live their life independently from someone telling them what to do or leading them along the way. When you add substance abuse to the mix, it just makes things worse. But my advice would be to somebody who's got a 20-year-old or a 22-year-old who's in trouble and in human trafficking and has a substance abuse issue, first of all, identify where the support is. Is there a supportive family? Is there a support system that they can come back to without being ingrained in that same environment? You know, if they're coming out of human trafficking into an environment where there's drugs and alcohol and there are human traffickers, there are predators, there are sexual predators around, that's not a good environment to come out of human trafficking. It's just not going to happen very well. So the first thing first, to identify the support system that they're going to be coming back to. And if they don't have one, how do you create one? How do you find people who will stand by, who will mentor, who will go through the thick of it with this victim step by step? That's your first thing, okay? Someone has got to be there. The number one indicator of children who grow up in the foster care system between am I going to go to college or prison is one single healthy adult through a lifetime. Where is the support? When it comes to getting them out, creating a support system, identify the healthy people in their life, if they have healthy people in their life. If they don't, you need to start with an addiction services program. Find your social service program in your city or even the next city over to get them out of the environment that they're in. So you're going to want to find a place, first of all, if they're ready and willing to get out, you need to have a plan in place. First of all, detox center. Find out where your detox centers are. And it doesn't have to be where they're at or where you're at. In fact, the farther away, the better. After that, they're going to need an addictions program, a long-term addiction program. If you can find a residential program, that's awesome. You know, I know you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, insurance and this and that and whatever. Oftentimes, state insurance will pay for some of the care, not all of it, but some of it. You're going to find mental health services. Those will be provided during the addiction services process. But then you're talking transition housing. Okay, where are they going to live? Are they going to live with you? Are they going to be back in the environment where they started? Are they going to be, you know, back around people who are, you know, using drugs and alcohol? Where are they going to live out and develop the skills to live independently, and not independently, interdependently, because we all need people, but live in a healthy place that provides them with safety, provides them with obviously their basic needs, but a place of love and belonging and attachment. All of these things might not have ever been part of the history of the person. So you're going to have to start from the ground up. So it's very difficult for me to go in and say, without knowing a bunch of specifics, how exactly to get somebody out of trafficking over the age of 18. They have to want it. They have to see that there's something better out there and want it so bad they're willing to go through the hell to get to the other side. They're already living in hell, but they're familiar with what they're living in, right? So this is just an unfamiliar kind of hell, is going through this process of recovery and coming out on the other end. Because coming out on the other end is beautiful. It's amazing. And it's so, so, so very possible. But the support system has to be there. The services have to be there. So have those things lined up before you even attempt to bring up how to get out of this life, or how are you going to get someone else to come out of this life. So have a plan in place. Talk to people, talk to professionals, find your local shelters, find your local addiction services, medical services, and have everybody ready to go when the time comes, if the time comes. Hopefully the time comes. So I hope that helps. You know, again, I didn't want to put this out there on Facebook and it come off cross or uncaring, because the bottom line is, whether they're 2 or 22, it starts from the very beginning, the grooming process and the level of abuse that leads them into this kind of life. So, you know, again, that's not saying that every single case is like that, but the majority of them are. So if that's the case with you or your friend or a family member or a loved one, just realize that there's a lifetime of trauma that needs to be unraveled, and that can take a very long time. But first, they have to have the support, you have to have the services, and they have to be willing. They have to be participants in their own rescue. It's sad, but it's true. They have to want it. I hope that helps, and I hope next week, if you guys, post me another question, I'd be happy to get back on here and shoot you another answer. So with all of that being said, God bless and have a great night. All right, bye-bye.